Welcome. I hope this video finds you well wherever in the world you are. We are coming up to another turn in the wheel. We are going into the season of Bealtaine or Beltane just before summer. So this is typically the time when we're really noticing the trees budding, the flowers coming out. I know here I've seen now so many butterflies, so many bees, and I know I'm going to see even more. We're really ramping up to that fertile time of the year where we really see what happens when the energies of fecundity come together to give us abundance. And I know I've spoken on this channel about the abundance that the goddess, Mother Nature, the earth provides for us, and that is our signal that everything that we need is already here, already provided for, and it is our birthright naturally to partake of that abundance. And it's really only societal structures that have closed off areas of land, that we have put a price on everything, that now we have to earn the things that Mother Earth just naturally drips forth with abundance for all of us. So I really like at this time of year to tap into that energy, to really remind myself that yes, it's all there for you to tap into. I also really like to use these markers throughout the year to focus my energy in a conscious way, in alignment with the energies that are naturally around. So I thought it would be nice to use the Mary Magdalene Oracle to tap into a message from Mary Magdalene for us to really focus on through the season of Bealtaine, to see what should we focus on in a grander scale. So obviously we all have our own individual energies, our own individual goals, things we want to strive for, but on a more collective level, what do we want to be concentrating on as we go into this season? So I did pull a card for us before filming, and I got the Cave of Eggs. We exist in and with each other. And this is a famous cave in France where it's said that Mary Magdalene spent some of her life after the events of the crucifixion. And there are these kind of divots in the cave as if an egg had been rubbed into them. And this links actually with the message that I received for spring equinox with the red egg, where Mary goes to the court of Tiberius to say, you know, Jesus has risen, and Tiberius says there's a more chance of that egg turning red than Jesus having come back from the dead, and the egg turns red. So it's actually a nice continuation on. It's kind of that next step where I think last time we were talking about speaking our truth, and we're now moving into the Cave of Eggs where we exist in and with each other. So really recognizing that while we have our own truth, we do exist, we coexist with others, and we have to try and do that in such a way that we can support each other, especially through these times. The world, really, if you look in history, has never had in recorded history a peaceful time. I think it's really just that in the West, we are being tested in ways that we don't have necessarily living memory of, especially for younger generations. We're really seeing a change to a way of life. We have been used to living a certain way and having certain structures in place, and those are now crumbling. Some of them for good, but it also seems like some of our ways of life that we're used to are changing for the worse, with certain policies and things that have come in and changes. And we're still seeing a lot of this idea that we are being pitted against each other. So, you know, is it your race? Is it your age? Is it your gender? Is it your political beliefs? And we're being told that we really need to fight against each other. But what this message is telling us is that we are connected intrinsically to everything on this planet, including each other. And when we go and we harm another, or we go with vitriol, we go with anger towards another, that has a ripple effect that goes beyond even us. What we do has consequences. How we speak to somebody else has consequences. And so we can go forward and think, how do I want to conduct myself? What effect do I want to have on the others that I am connected to? How is my energy? How are my words? How are my actions affecting others? And then taking it from another angle and saying, okay, if everything's connected, then I'm being influenced by things around me, by other people's thoughts, energies, actions, words. How do I want to allow that to affect me? Because you can be part of that ripple that gets caught up in someone else's energy. So in these really challenging times that we are facing, this message is asking us to remember that we are connected to each and everything on this planet. And that can be a difficult message sometimes when we are presented with someone who perhaps doesn't share our view, that is very sacred to us, that is very important to us, and we don't really feel like being particularly nice to that person. We don't really feel like being understanding towards another that is not understanding of us. But that is where the change occurs. That is where the scales tip, is when one person is willing to say, okay, I'm not going to react. I'm going to listen. I'm going to hold space, and I'm going to try and meet this person heart to heart, because someone has to do it. Someone has to take that step to tip those scales, and it can be really difficult. And it doesn't mean that we allow people to walk all over us and that we don't stand up when we see injustice, but it's about being open to listening. It's about not jumping in straight away with a defensive argument or an offensive argument. It's about being open and recognizing that if I put out a certain energy, that energy is connected to everyone. If we are intrinsically connected to everything on this planet, the energy we hold within us affects those around us. And so we have to make that conscious choice of what kind of energy we want to put out. Is it a strong, steadfast energy of love, or is it one of hatred and division based in fear? And we have to make that choice, and it's a really difficult choice to make. But as we go into this new season, we can really, to help us do this work, we can really connect in with our relationship with the divine. Because when we open to divine love, we open to a love that is there no matter what. It doesn't step in to stop us hurting ourselves or each other, but it's always there to help us work through the pain, because we have free will. And so when we open to that divine love, we're opening to a love that is more full of wisdom than our human self can be. And it allows us to see, where is the wisdom in this interaction that I'm having? Is the wisdom going to come from me meeting this person with being aggressive and accusatory and defensive, or is the wisdom going to come in me listening to this person's point of view and trying to meet them heart to heart? I've said before on this channel that a good exercise to do is imagining that everyone is you having a different experience, living a different life, and trying to think, what would make me act in that way, in a way that maybe I can just really not reconcile with, and trying to understand another's point of view and to see how did they get to where they are, and kind of zooming out on that to try and have compassion and empathy for what is going on. Because a lot of the time when people do things that are hurtful or it seems irrational, a lot of the time it's coming from fear. What are they afraid of? What has been conditioned into them? Why do they feel they have to act this way? And really trying to understand that. The legend of Mary in this cave is that this is where she went to meditate, to be one with the divine, to experience that divine union. Some people say it's where she went to have union with Christ after he died. It depends on how you feel about that, whether she was just going to commune with Christ, or whether she was going to commune with that divine source that Christ had tapped into and returned to upon his death and resurrection. But either way, it's a union of divine love. It's a union that is difficult for us as humans to understand, because union to us is, we're physical, we're in physical bodies, so it can be hard for us to understand, well, how do we have a union with the divine that's so nebulous? How can we do that? And sitting with this idea of Mary in the cave invites us to sit in silence and to welcome the divine in, and to say that we are open. I am open to divine love. I am open for divine love to flow through me. Because to expect ourselves as humans to be able to say, oh yeah, okay, I'm just gonna see all these people who are doing harm and all these people who are creating difficult circumstances, I'm just gonna meet them with divine love. Yeah, I can do that. It's a little bit far-fetched, because we are fully human and it's really hard for us to do that, and we're not expected to, as humans, to be able to rise to that level, if you like. We're not expected to, but the divine can do that, and we are channels of the divine. We are sparks of the divine. And so when we allow divinity to come into us and work through us, to flow through us, that makes the job a lot easier to really allow that divine love and compassion to flow out of us. It's okay for our human part to have an issue with that, to struggle with that, and that's why we open to divine love. The other thing to speak about in this message is, we have had a very long time of uplifting the individual, of saying, yes, it's all about you. It's all about what you want, your power, your confidence, your goals, your dreams, your abundance, your manifestation, what you want. And in some circumstances, this really has driven people away from the idea of this interconnectedness. It's really become a lot about what the individual wants and not having to compromise. You shouldn't have to compromise. It's your divine sovereignty. And while that is true on a level, this message reminds us that if everybody lived that way, it would be extremely difficult, because there would be no compromise. And we would all have to live in our own individual bubble so that we could make sure that the conditions we need are met, because we can't merge with another then, because that requires compromise. It requires bending and softening. And if we're all very individual and we're all very much the center of the universe, then how do we merge? How do we do that? And that can be a challenge, especially if you're new to a path of opening to the divine. It can feel like, I don't really want to ask the divine to work through me, because I don't know what its motives are, and what about my dreams and my goals? What if the divine has something different in mind? And if you believe that the divine is within you, then you can't have a different goal to the divine, because you are divine. But this can be a really difficult thing to get past when you're trying to open to divine love. And so this message of individuality, it's very ego driven, in the sense that the ego is, the armor that we put on ourselves as we grow up in this world. It's how we learn to set boundaries and defend ourselves, not the kind of ego that's like, oh, you're so big-headed. Our ego struggles with bending to another, with merging with another, with merging with the divine, because our ego doesn't want itself to be destroyed, because it thinks it is the center of the universe. So there's a real call with this message to recognize when we might be cutting our nose off to spite our own face, so to speak. If we're not willing to compromise, if we're not willing to listen, how can we merge? How can we come into living with others side by side if we can't reach that compromise? And again, that can be really difficult when you're faced with someone who definitely doesn't want to compromise. They definitely know that they're right, their way is the right way. And this is where all we can do is lead by example where we can. You know, this is finding relationships that are aligned. It's speaking our truth, but in a way that is centered in love. So it's not about saying, no, you're wrong, my way is right, and getting into an argument. It's about saying, this is my experience. I'm listening to yours. This is my experience. And then learning, okay, that person's not, I can't merge with that person. I can't merge with the divinity in that other person because they're closed off to that divine side of themselves. And I can't merge with them right now. And it's about finding those relationships that do, and standing in that truth and that love when you come up against difficult people, but not going down that path of, we are so different and so opposed, we are so separate, not enforcing that through getting into an argument with them, but simply stating your truth in a peaceful way and listening to theirs, being open to listen to them. And then on a personal, individual level, it's about being open to that union with the divine, surrendering in that way and saying, I am open to you. I ask you, God, Goddess, whoever, to flow through me, do your work through me. Because the divine only ever has our best intentions at heart. That's all it can do. And so trusting in that and allowing the divine to flow through you. And as you become more of a vessel for that divine love, it becomes then easier to see, how do I navigate my way with these difficult relationships? Because really it's not you, it's the divine that is flowing through you and out. And that becomes more apparent the more you open to the divine. So it's about recognizing that we're human, and it's really difficult for us to receive this message that we are all one, we are all connected, and that means that we should try and treat each other really, really well, even if we don't want to. It's okay to find that difficult and to ask the divine to step more and more into you and be more and more of a vessel for the divine, and trusting in that merging, in that union with the divine. This is the thing with the new structures, the new energy, that we have the potential to anchor in to our existence. We don't have to understand it all right now. How can we? We're not living in that world. All of us are not fully aware that we are divine. We are not fully in connection to the divine all the time, in that kind of awakened state. And we sometimes just have to trust the process to getting us there, because we're not there yet. So this is a call for us to trust in that process and trust in this new way of being, of living, because it's not here yet. It might not even get here in our lifetime, but we can set the path, we can lay the path with our actions, and having trust that when we ask the divine to work through us, we are working the divine plan. And that can be quite difficult when, we're stuck in this world with, the leaders that we have and the people that cause a lot of problems. And it can be really difficult, but it's a choice that we have to make of whether we're going to walk in love and ask the divine in, or whether we're going to stay kind of stubborn and be like, no, I can't see this merge. I can't see how that's going to happen. I need to protect my individual interests. So it's a call going forward to trust in the divine and to learn to be open to it. I want to be really clear again that this is not about being a doormat. When Mary faced opposition from Peter in her gospel, when she faced opposition in the Pistis Sophia for asking too many questions, she didn't sit down and shut up. She didn't go away. She carried on speaking, but she carried on speaking her truth. She carried on being that vessel for the divine to act through her, and she kept voicing that divine truth. So and you know, Jesus as well, when he went into the temple and he saw all the money changing hands, you know, what's the image most people have of Jesus? Like this really placid, laid back guy. Well, he kind of went up apeshit in the temple, and he flipped tables over, and he got annoyed. And he allowed his anger to be seen because it was hypocrisy that he was seeing, basically. And it was a desecration of the divine temple as he saw it. And he did get angry, and he did allow his emotions to show. I'm not saying we should go flipping tables. Like, I mean, it's a bit extreme. But when we have to, we can absolutely stand up for ourselves and what we believe in. But it's using discernment of how to do that and when to do it. You know, most of us, day to day, we're not coming up against things where we need to go flipping tables. But when we do, we know the divine is behind us if we are truly linked in with that divine and not sort of having an ego inflation because we think that we are super special in some way and chosen by the divine. That can be a dangerous path to go down. But acting appropriately when we need to anchor in those messages of love ultimately, and not allowing ourselves to be dismissed, to be removed. You know, Mary didn't do that. We follow her example, and when we're facing opposition, we speak truth, and we do it in a measured way. And so I want to make it clear that when I'm saying, you know, we exist in and with each other, and we need to try and bridge these gaps and merge and reach compromise and see, when I say merge with the divine in another, I mean to be able to see that divine part of them, no matter what it is that they're doing, and to say, I know there is the same divine spark in you as there is in me, and I'm trying to understand why the human part of you is acting this way. So even though we are merging with another in that way, we're not completely giving over. We're not saying, okay, I'm going to believe what you believe, I'm going to let you treat me however. No, we're just trying to understand why the human side of them is acting the way they are, and recognizing that divine side, and knowing that we have that connection to that person, but still standing in our truth when we need to, just like Mary did, just like Jesus did. So for this season, know that the divine is there to be merged with. You just have to open to it. You just have to let the divine know that you are open. You've remembered that you are a divine child. You have that divine spark, and you are remembering that, and you are inviting the divine into your heart. I mean, it's already there, but it helps us to conceptualize it at first as inviting the divine in. It's really allowing the divine to shine through you. That is what this message is calling for, and it can be difficult, but that is why we connect with the divine, to allow us to our human side to step aside, our ego to step aside, and allow that divinity to shine through us. And when you have these problems, when you come up against people who are difficult, it's okay to step back for a moment and to take a breath and remember that divine part of yourself, and to act from that part of yourself rather than the reactive human side of us that wants to go straight to defense, go straight to offense. So a call to remember our interconnectedness, and remember that we all come from that same divine source. And really what we want is for everyone to remember that. That's what we really want. Do we bring people to that remembrance with violence, with anger? It doesn't sound very sort of divine loving, does it? So maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's a way to recognize the divinity in everybody, and to be open to understanding why they're coming from the place they're coming from, and then just speaking our truth in love, and meeting hatred with love, if we can do that. So I hope you have a wonderful Beltane season. All links below of ways you can interact with me more and the message of Mary Magdalene more. Do have a beautiful Bealtaine. Thank you for being with me. Many blessings.